What is 1 second? You blinked, 2 people died. Snapped your fingers, and 4 more were born. Smiled, someone made more than $2,000. You barely have enough time to form a thought, and almost 5,000 new stars are born in the universe. You just sighed. And 600 million tons of hydrogen was converted into about the same amount of helium in the sun. You now feel very surprised. And more than 15 million tons of rain just fell on the Earth. 13.7 billion years ago, 1 second was enough for our universe to expand and cool down. Gravity appeared, elementary particles were formed. After all, we wouldn't be watching this video if it hadn't been for those distant fractions of a second. You may have seen it all on YouTube 1,000 times before, and you might be thinking, why did I learn any of this? Just so you could take a little break from this insanely hectic life and think about the truly incredible scale of the universe in which you and I were lucky enough to be born. I could list similar facts about what happens in just 1 second for quite a long time. But when I was collecting examples on the internet, at some point I had the question, who's collecting such data in the world? How can anyone know what's happening in the entire universe, and particularly in such a short period of time? This idea really hooked me, and here's what I found out. I'll start with the number of deaths. As it turns out, 2/3 of the world's annual deaths are not registered, simply because there's no data on the reasons. In other words, no one on Earth really knows how many people die each year. But on Google, you can easily find information that states there are about 2 deaths per second. Where did this data come from? That question remains open. But there's even more interesting information: the population count. Back in the year 2011, it was announced that there are now 7 billion people on Earth. In the year 2020, this figure was close to 7.8 billion people. But is this really the case? Let's look at the example of Nigeria. This country is considered the most populous in all of Africa, and according to statistics from 2020, its population is more than 206 million people. At the same time, there hasn't been a real census here since 2006, and even then, according to some experts, the data was overstated. Moreover, it was later reported that none of the country's population censuses were ever accurate. That is, there's no evidence that the population count provided in Wikipedia is accurate, and this is only an example of one country. But look at what else I found. India and China compete with each other for first place in terms of population in the world. According to official data, China is still the leader, but the gap with India is minimal, just over 50 million people. But some demographers, such as Fuxian Yi of the University of Wisconsin, argue that India has already surpassed China. The real population of China, according to the scientist, may be 90 million less than the stated one. And this is not to mention smaller countries, where it's not clear exactly how many people are living. For example, in North Macedonia, according to some data, at the time of the release of this video, no more than 1.5 million people are actually living there. Well, the 2018 census shows that there are more than 2 million. So, how many of us are actually on the planet? I very much doubt that we'll ever know the truth. I was also interested in finding out the profits of large corporations per second. It turned out that Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos earns almost $2,500 per second. This is slightly less than Apple, with a profit of $2,000 per second. The numbers are impressive, but where did they come from? There's no scheme here. Forbes magazine publishes annual rankings of the world's wealthiest people with their annual income. This figure is taken as a basis, but none of the billionaires share their earnings reports with the respected publication. The journal publishes information based only on its expert assessment of the assets of a person or company. All open sources are studied, a journalistic investigation is conducted, and colleagues and competitors are interviewed. What can we conclude from all of this? No one really knows what the exact incomes are of those at the top of the Forbes list. Counting the number of stars that appear in 1 second was also a challenge. There's a value called the star formation rate. In our galaxy, it's about 3 solar masses per year. Simply put, so much interstellar gas and dust is produced in a year that it corresponds to about 3 times the mass of the Sun. It's not necessary that this entire mass is a part of one individual star. There are stars much larger than our Sun in mass, and others, of course, that are smaller. But scientists decided to take an average number. Every year in our galaxy, 3 new stars appear, which combined equal the mass of our Sun. Further, scientists estimate that there are about 50 billion galaxies in the entire observable universe. The number of galaxies was simply multiplied by 3 to make 150 billion stars a year. From this, they deduced the beautiful figure of 400 million stars per day and 4,800 stars per second. But there were 2 things that confused me. First, are there exactly 50 billion galaxies? I found a rebuttal. A couple of years ago, an international team of astronomers concluded that there are at least 2 trillion of them in the observable universe. That's about 10 times more than previously thought. And you'll agree, this dramatically changes the whole picture. Second, 2 trillion galaxies are located only in the observable part of the universe. This is just a spherical region of the universe with matter that can be observed from Earth using telescopes or research probes. We can't look beyond 46 billion light-years in all directions, so all we see is just a tiny fraction of what actually exists. The answer to the question of how many stars are actually born per second is unlikely to appear soon. Of course, with more powerful telescopes, counting them would be easier. But unfortunately, we don't yet have such technology. 15 million tons of rain per second, which I mentioned at the beginning, is also an unimaginable amount. I deduced this from the data that 907 million tons of rain falls on the Earth every minute. But who counts precipitation on the planet and how? It turned out that at least several systems do this, both on Earth and in space. But the most common are special vessels, rain gauges. Old samples are arranged so that first the precipitation is collected in a funnel, and then the water is tipped out of it into a special container. But the problem is that the rain may stop before the funnel is full. And before the next rain, the water in it may have time to evaporate or decrease in volume. In a strong wind, raindrops could be completely blown away. And at temperatures close to 0 degrees Celsius or 32 degrees Fahrenheit, ice can collect in the vessels, which can block the collection of precipitation. So how, in principle, can we speak about an exact measurement of rain? I've given you all these examples to demonstrate that you cannot blindly believe statistics. Critical thinking is the key to an adequate existence in this world. Every fact that you meet in the media should be questioned. Everything we think is true can actually be a lie. Any indisputable fact from yesterday or today can quickly lose its relevance. And yes, you can argue with me here. However, I'm just giving you something to think about. You choose whether to believe me or not. However, no one will argue with the fact that a lot of different events actually happen in the world in a mere second. Even here on YouTube, a little more than 1 hour of new video content is uploaded per second. What can you do in a second? Set a stopwatch and let me know in the comments. Let me share with you a secret. In 1 second, you can like and subscribe to my channel. I did it. Can you?